All right, so I'm here with Adam Gower. Adam, what is up? I appreciate you being on today.
Thank you so much. I've been looking forward to meeting you and to talking to you for some time. Thanks for having me.
Yes, this is going to be an absolute blast. You're a 30-year real estate or 30 plus year real estate veteran. I think you started investing in 1982 with over 1.5 billion of commercial real estate investment and finance experience. You now help with crowdfunding and have an entire business that's built around that.
Mhm.
So I can't wait to unpack it all. And one of the things that I love the most about this show is when I get to talk with guests who've been doing this for a long time, because you
Mhm.
guys have a totally different perspective than us that have only been in real estate 5, 10, even 15 years. So take us back as far as you want. You don't have to go all the way to 82 if you don't want, but you
Okay.
can. And yeah, looking at the watch right there.
No, I'm
And
looking at my finger to see what's on
this
it.
is going to be a 4-hour podcast. And
Let me
what?
just order some sandwiches.
Yeah, yeah, we'll DoorDash the food in. Oh my gosh, that's great. So, how'd you get started in this whole mess called real estate in the first
Mm.
place?
Okay, I will go all the way back, but I'm going to make it quick because I do talk about this quite a lot. So I actually started pulling wires for an electrician, Jaron. I mean, I was knocking on doors. This is so long ago. I was knocking on doors around where I lived, and I told people, "Listen, I'll do anything for $5 an hour." So, I got some requests that were anything kind of requests. But one guy said to me, he was an electrician, and he said, "Hey, will you do you mind doing labor, hard labor?" So I said no. So he sent me up into attics and into basements, basement crawl spaces, pulling wires amongst all the fluff and dead mice and spiders and
Mm,
whatever. So that's kind of how I started, was hands-on on construction sites, and then I started working for a developer, a ground-up multifamily developer. It's a long story. I won't go into all the details. So my job was investor relations. I raised capital for them from investors, and we built a lot, did a lot of work in those. It was all ground-up multifamily. And then I ended up. Then there was what was called the savings and loan crisis. That's when there was a major banking crisis in the early 1990s, late 80s, early 1990s, that precipitated a major collapse in commercial real estate values,
interesting.
particularly multifamily. And so the business that I was in kind of cratered, and I ended up in Japan working with the investors that I'd raised money from, and ended up running a division of Universal Studios over there. So I came
Wow.
in and built all their real estate across Asia Pacific, so headquartered in Tokyo. Then I came back and did my own developments, and in '07 I was lucky or dumb enough to sell out. I think both, actually. I didn't know what was going on. I knew something was going on that was troubling. And
Yeah.
so I sold everything. And that was before the global financial crisis. And then I was brought into a major bank, East West Bank, who'd done a lot of lending for a lot of real estate collateralized lending, commercial real estate. And they had a lot of loans that were non-performing. So they were struggling. At least those loans were struggling. My job
Yep.
was to sell the loans to investors. So that's what I did, and then I went into that was brought into Colony Capital, kind of, not quite directly, and I managed a $6-7 billion portfolio, or not managed. I worked on a $6-7 billion portfolio of non-performing loans that were from failed banks. East West was incredibly successful, and continues to be to this day. And then I stopped doing that in around 2012, I suppose, around the time the Jobs Act was passed,
Okay.
and uh, uh, had been doing some seed and angel investing. So that's kind of venture capital,
Mhm.
um, and learned the language of digital marketing. It was a foreign language to me. So when the Jobs Act was passed, it made sense that this new uh, industry, this new these new regulations could be applied directly to commercial real estate capital formation by applying digital marketing uh, tactics and techniques. And so that's what we've been doing since then. We now build, for want of a better term, Jaron, it's not quite technically right, but we build crowdfunding websites for real estate sponsors, professional real estate, or real estate professionals, people who do it all the time,
Yeah.
so that they can raise capital online. That's basically what we do now. Our clients manage over 35 billion of capital and have raised. I mean, I can evidence 300 million plus through recorded testimonials, but in fact, it's probably in excess of $1 billion that they've raised using our systems.
And this is Gower Crowd, right?
Gowercrowd.com. Yeah.
Now, do you guys actually build like a separate platform for them, or you have a marketplace
No,
platform
we
that
build
they?
separate ones for our clients.
Wow.
So the way it kind of came about was that I had no look, when crowdfunding started or was legalized in 2012 for real estate,
Yeah.
nobody really knew where it was going to go. I mean, it was experimental. There were people, there were all kinds of things. People tried all kinds and continue to try all kinds of different ways of leveraging uh, technology to raise capital, but there was no clear path to it. Mine was kind of accidental in a way. I started a podcast. I think it was the first thing I did was I started a podcast way back and figured out how to do that. I mean, there weren't that many. I mean, it was podcasts were fairly popular. Now that, it's just exploded, but I've been doing
Yeah.
it for, 10 years, or I don't know how long I've been. It's probably not 10 years, but it's been a while.
Yep.
And it was, there was no one that would do it for you. Today, we do it for our clients. There's all kinds of it. But in those days, you had to figure it out. And so I figured out how to produce them, how to edit audio, how to record audio, how to edit audio, how to create the podcast, how to upload the podcast. I built a website. I did it all myself. And after a while, what I realized was that, to my surprise, people were coming to me. Right? People I'd never heard of before were knocking on my door. And I just thought, wow, this is kind of interesting. I hadn't expected that. And so I started building funnels, digital marketing funnels that were specifically geared to generating leads. And one of my old friends from the global financial crisis days, I was having a chat with at the time had 300 million of assets under management. Today it's 1.6 billion. And he
Wow.
said to me, yeah, we're going out, we're trying to get some institutional capital, and it's expensive money, but we want to grow. And I said, well, why don't you raise money? Why don't you crowdfund it? I said, I'll tell you what, I'll build you some systems that will help you raise money from individual accredited investors. And he said, well, it's a long time ago. He's a good friend. He said, well, have you ever done it before for a sponsor? And I said, no. You're the guinea pig. And he said, all right, give it a go. So what I did was I built the same kind of systems for him that I knew were working for me, right? So I just knew there were certain things that were working, that were drawing attention to my platform. I think it was called something different even there. NRE Forum. It was National Real Estate Forum, I called it originally. But it was attracting attention. And it was largely content driven. So I built the same thing. We created content for him. We rebuilt his website so that it was optimized for capital formation. And we built a system for him. And, it's gone from strength to strength since then. Like I say, they've gone from 300 million to 1.6 billion in however long it's been. I mean, obviously not entirely thanks to us. I would like to think it was.
No, but you've played a huge role in it.
But it's the foundation upon which his business has been built. Yeah.
So
And
what does
now we
that
do
look
that.
like?
We have, I don't know how many dozens of clients we've had since then.
Wow. And you started that when? When'd you start Gower Crowd?
Well, Gower Crowd, I'm not sure, but I started with digital marketing probably around 2013 or 14.
That's right. You said that
So
after
almost 10
John's.
years. I would say it's about 10 years ago.
Yeah. I just started the digital marketing world 2021. And,
Hmm.
when I say digital marketing, it started with Instagram. And then since when you start getting products and you're bringing in customers, you start learning about funnels and landing pages and what's working, what's not working. Lord have mercy if there's not a lot that goes into it. People just think it's like, oh, maybe you make an ad, create a landing page, they give you your email, and then they just buy, or they you're able to raise money from them. Oh my gosh, it opened my eyes into an entirely different world that I didn't know exists. I just ordered 3 books today, literally 3 books today before I started working this morning on digital marketing, just to continue getting better, because it's an area that I am green in and growing, but the opportunities are endless, no matter what
It's
industry
funny
you're in.
actually, Sharon. I'll tell you that I remember distinctly listening to uh, one podcast. So I used to listen to. There was this one podcast I used to right at the beginning when I was just scratching my head trying to. All right, my wife listened to podcasts. I didn't even know what they were.
Yeah.
Like, what's a kind of wacky, kind of newfangled idea? What is that? And so I started listening to a podcast on how to produce a podcast. It was very, very detailed. And most of the time, the guy just did his own kind of training sessions. But there was this one that where he had a guest, somebody who had built a podcast and whatever. And I remember her saying, she said something like, I remember it quite distinctly. Her business was, she had some kind of small scale golf resort thing with a hotel on it. And the reason I dialed in on this one particular and paid particular attention is because a friend of mine has the same kind of setup, right? So I know
Interesting.
somebody that does the same thing. And she said, yeah, so we do, oh no, maybe it was a Facebook advertising podcast. I forget exactly, but the point was, she
Yeah.
said, yeah, we put the ads up, and we create the landing page and we do these automated emails. I was automated emails. Wow, that sounds interesting. So I thought I'll do that. And then I realized she made it sound really easy, but there is a lot of work that goes into that. I mean, you got to just copy, you got to come up with images, you got to figure out how to put them, where do you put them, you got to build landing pages, you got to, hook everything up technically.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot to it. I mean, once you get a formula down, which is what we do,
Yep.
it's so second nature to us now that
Yep.
I don't want to say it because we have clients. But for us, it's really easy.
Yep.
The challenge for us is figuring out all the time how to make it better. How do we
Hmm.
make the systems that we've got even better than they are? So that's why I know we're at the cutting edge of the industry, because we're constantly looking at ways of improving it. The base stuff that we do for us is easy. For our clients, it's rocket science.
Yes. Agreed.
But we do look for ways to improve it. That's the hardest part,
It
actually.
is, and there's a lot of data. There's so much data behind it. So for me, I'm not a strong data driven person. I'm
Mm.
more the visionary. Let's go bust through the wall. I'll create all the stuff, have the great ideas. But and that's one of the things we're working on in our business is you have to dig in and say, how can we continue to make this better? Because you may have a high performing, funnel or landing page or email suite sequence, but that doesn't mean you stop there. You always got to be iterating, always got to be trying. I mean, there's some people they'll tell you run 20 different ads a week, be shooting 20 different ads and trying 3 different landing pages and 5 different sets of copy. And I'm just like, holy moly, look, I found one ad that worked. We're gonna rock with that one for a while. And they're like, no,
Yeah,
no, 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 no,
exactly.
that's not how it goes.
Well, but you can but
So
that's the thing as well. Look, most of the time we spend building funnels and building systems that fail abysmally,
gotcha.
basically. We don't do that for clients, we do it for
Oh yeah.
Gower. So
Yeah,
we
you gotta
test stuff
try.
all the time. All right, this looks kind of like a cool widget or a nice shiny object. Let's go and buy that and see how it works. And we'll put a lot of effort into it. I mean, we'll spend a lot of time. I spend a lot of time creating content is very time consuming. Getting it right is not easy. And then building the systems around it also takes time, especially when they're ones that you're not familiar with. And so we spend, I would say that 9 out of 10 times what we test abysmally fails.
Hey, that one time is what you do with your
What
customers.
works, yes, exactly. The stuff that works, we double down on, and then we roll that stuff out to clients. So most of the time is figuring out what. Well, you're always looking for the win,
Yeah.
but by process of elimination, that's
Yep.
really the only way to find it.
That's
Frankly.
literally that's the only way I've found in this particular industry, and it seems to work. I want to take a step back
Sure.
to, you're still doing this to an extent today, helping people build out these sites. But when you were starting in real estate, it sounds like you did a lot with investor relations. You're
Mhm.
raising capital, you're finding bad, notes and finding other investors. What would you say the key to our listeners? Because a lot of them aren't syndicating yet, or they're not raising funds, and so they're not. When I say funds, millions of dollars or big lump sums, but the way we teach through the Burr method is you are raising capital, even if it's for one single family home. So you may have to go raise $100,000 or $150,000, or maybe you only need to raise 20 grand to cover the down payment for hard money. But
Mhm.
the way the strategy we teach is you got to have relationship with people who have capital who want to invest that capital. Hey guys, when you're just starting out as a real estate investor, finding deals is the most important thing you can do. But unfortunately, it can also be your biggest hurdle. And let me tell you, it gets even harder when your business grows and you don't have a lot of time to look for properties and evaluate deals like you did on the front end. That's why you need to work with New Western. New Western has properties ready for rehab on their marketplace today. That means you skip the hours of research, driving neighborhoods, or calling agents. And instead, you get to start with a ready-made property. You can rehab and flip it, or rehab it and burr it and hold it as a rental. So why is New Western good at what they do? Well, they buy and sell a property every 13 minutes. They work exclusively with investors and value add properties, and that's all they do. They're licensed agents, they have a network of lenders, and they'll help you grow your business. So if you're ready to jumpstart your next project, visit newwestern.com, join their marketplace, and access the largest private source of rehab properties in the nation. And so, for you throughout your career, somebody who's been doing this a long time, what have you found as important lessons that whether you're raising 100 million or whether you're raising 100,000 puts you in a good position to be able to lock those deals up?
It's Well, you mean to raise the capital?
Yeah, exactly. To lock the capital. Yep.
Right. Yes, it's actually interesting that you should say that. There was a post on LinkedIn recently, as in like yesterday, where there was somebody who was a capital raising coach, and she had a list of things that you've got to do when raising capital. You should get up in the morning and say some affirmative statements. Then you should go for a nice walk, and then you should do this. There's this whole list of things that you should do about kind of building up yourself in your own mind. I don't know what you call it. It's like mindset. Yeah, look, I mean,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
good things to have. There's only one thing that you absolutely positively have to have when you're raising money, and that is total confidence in the deal you are buying. Period.
Write that down, folks.
That is
Write
the
that down.
only thing. You have to have absolute conviction that the deal you are investing in is a winner. And that doesn't mean bluffing it. That means you've covered every single base. You've looked at
Mhm.
all the upside, all the downside. You've checked your due diligence list up and down. There is nothing that you cannot answer about this deal, and that is why you believe in it. If you have total conviction in your deal, not only will you raise capital, but your deal will succeed, should succeed. And
Yes.
that means covering the downside as well. I believe, we'll get out in 12 months because if we don't, we're going to lose everything. That means we can survive if there's a downturn, right? If the worst case scenario, that we can hold on to this thing forever, right? So for example, we're working with, we've got a sponsor at the moment that's building, I don't know, 36 Uber high-end condos somewhere or other. It doesn't matter where. It's like a $30 million project. The thing's huge for what it is. And And so what we're doing is we're looking, all right, what is the absolute worst case scenario here? And how do you cover that worst case scenario? So, for example, I've said, well, I know that it never occurred to you to rent these units, but let's say the world goes to hell in a handbasket. What could you get in rent
Mm,
if you had to rent them? And would that cover your debt? Would that cover the overhead? Let's run those numbers, because at the end of the day, if your plan is to exit through a sale, but for some reason, any reason you cannot sell, can you rent them? And if you can rent them, does that cover it? And if it doesn't, then bring your debt levels down so that it does cover it. So you are
yeah.
protected. So I'm sorry, I'm going on a little. I did
No, I
have
love it. This is what the people need to hear.
a kind of a single sentence. You've got to have total conviction in your deal. That really is the headline. But behind
Yes.
that is, how do you get that conviction? How do you get to the point where you totally believe in it? At least that's how I do it. I've
Yeah.
raised a lot of money in my time, and I only raise money for deals that I would want to own myself, that I believe myself. Personally, I only buy stuff that I would live in
Yep.
myself as
Yep.
well. Right. So, I mean, not 200 unit apartment buildings, but I mean, is this somewhere that you would want to be, that you'd be comfortable with your family? I mean, that's a different story. I'm going down a little bit
No,
of a
I
rabbit.
love that. I mean, that's great advice because there's details underneath that heading that you said where it's be
Yeah.
convicted. But once you're convicted, what causes that conviction? And it's all the things that you just stated. And I want to hit on a point that you mentioned. It's buying deals that there are contingencies where you can cover yourself should bad things happen. Man, the amount of people I know, and I think it was happening more when the market was on that big run in 21, 22, and whatever, last 3 years. People were buying deals. I had acquaintances that went into these projects knowing that the people raising money had to get out of that deal within 6 months for it to make sense. And that's a very bad thing to do because you know what happened with this particular deal I'm thinking of. I'm not going to give the details, but
Mm,
they were actually they needed to do it was a bit more of a business deal, but I've seen people do this in real estate. This particular one that just came to mind, they needed to do an IPO within 6 months to really hit and give the investors their big returns. If they were thinking, what do you think happened by that 6 month? This particular industry, boom, tanked. Now it's not going to tank forever. It will come back up. But now these investors who had, I think the minimum investment was 150 grand, they're not getting their money back for they're having to wait this out. It's either you exit and take a loss or you wait it out for years. And so just to your point, it's a long story to make this point. Don't invest in deals like that. Don't raise capital for deals like that, number one, ever. And then don't put your money in that particular scenario. If you're going to do that, go to casino and put it on red. They'll at least give you free drinks. Like let's if you're going to gamble, have fun with it. Don't do it in some if it seems too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true.
mhm.
And a lot of people get caught up in excitement on things that don't make sense. And I think another thing people struggle with, tell me if you've seen this when it comes to raising capital, is feeling like beggars. I think instead of understanding that the person who's going to give them the capital, knowing that it's a business transaction. So you're going to raise money. Person you're trying to raise money from, you as a new person trying to raise capital, almost feel like you're begging, oh, I need money to get this deal done. We got to get that mindset out. You have to understand that this is a two-sided business transaction where they're helping you to get this deal done, but then they are going to make fantastic returns on the back end as long as you're convicted in your deal and you have a good deal sitting in your hands.
Mm. Okay, so here's how I would respond to that. And this is because the world that I inhabit is the world of digital marketing. So in digital, when you're doing digital marketing, and you're not just going to a very small subset, but even if you are going to a very small subset, it kind of applies as well. It's easier when you're dealing with huge numbers. I don't mean raising huge amounts of money. I mean when you are soliciting investment from a large number of people rather than just from a handful. Right? That's what I mean by large numbers. But you got to think of it in terms of kind of basic high school math. I don't know if you remember, but there was this thing called we called it the normal curve. Yeah, I think we call it the
Mm-hmm.
bell curve.
Yep.
Remember the bell curve? Right. So there's going to be down the middle of your bell curve, where the vast majority of people reside, are those they're indifferent. They don't mind you talking. They're not going to invest. They're unlikely to invest, but they're indifferent. As you move to the left on a bell curve to 2, 3, 4 standard deviations, 3, 4 standard deviations, you've got those people who think you are a total loser. they
Yes.
just think you are Mr. Conman, number one. You should be in jail. Don't call me, we'll call you, kind of
Yeah, I
people.
got one of those messages this morning.
Yeah,
Love
you
them.
get the FU emails once in a while. I mean, it's what
Yep.
happens. But it doesn't matter, because I always think as soon as you get one of those, that's actually a sign that you're doing it right. Why?
Mm.
Because if you're doing it right on the other side of that curve, on the right-hand side of the curve, 2, 3 standard deviations out, is the person who absolutely loves everything that you're saying. They are sitting there waiting to send you a check.
Wow.
And those are the people that you need to appeal to. So you talk about begging. No, absolutely you shouldn't do that. What you want to do in your mind, the way that you get over that problem, is that you only ever talk to people as though they were your ideal prospect.
Mm.
Have that person in your mind's eye. Who is the ideal person? This person I'm talking to right now is going to be hyper responsive and super responsive to what I'm saying. So I'm just going to feed that response loop with why I think they should invest, why I believe in the deal, etc. Now, if they say no, that's fine. It's okay. That you're never going to persuade them, no matter what you say. But
Yep.
when you find the person that is responsive, your investor avatar, your ideal investor, they will be attracted to you. That's the beauty of doing it online. Now, you don't have to be raising gazillions of dollars. You could have a Facebook page, or LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever. What did you say? Instagram. And you could be telling your story. You mentioned story. You could be telling your story on Instagram. Just make sure that you're telling your story and you are crafting the language so that it is designed to appeal to the ideal investor. Whoever that is, have that person in your mind's eye and write and create content specifically for that person. If you do that, you will attract people like that, and they will come to you and they will invest.
Yeah. And you don't have to have a huge following to do this, guys. Long before the Finance Cowboy brand existed and I had all these followers, I didn't have all these followers. It was just me on a personal Facebook account
Mm.
telling deals that I had, telling everybody I know that I'm working on real estate deals, posting pictures and videos of my walkthroughs, and people in my network who were ideal to, just like Adam's talking about, to do what I needed on my end. They wanted to invest. They wanted to be, make 10 to 12% in 6 months to 12 months. They came calling because they're like, whoa, this guy knows what he's doing. He's doing these deals. I have money sitting in a savings account that's earning me at the time 0.00000 whatever too. They've gone up a little higher since. Let me go put this money to work and see how it happens. And so you don't need to be sitting there thinking, oh, I need a huge newsletter. I need a huge social media following. No, just start organically. Start by posting on your Facebook page. Start by posting in Facebook, real estate Facebook groups. Go to real estate meetups. Get integrated into the Facebook or the real estate world where you live. And if you do that and you start letting everybody know that you're an investor and you're always looking for partners, the doors will open. The doors will open. But if people don't know, the doors will never open because the doors aren't there. They don't even know that you exist.
That's exactly right.
So, well, Adam, thank you for being on today, man. I really appreciate you taking the time
Sure.
to do this. So, if we had folks who are looking to raise capital
Mm.
and they're like, "Hey, I need help building out a platform. Who can walk me through this?" What does that look like on your guys' end, and how can they find you?
Thank you for asking. Yeah. So really, look, the gowercrowd.com website is, when I first built it, seriously, Jaron, it's funny to think of it. I used a little hyperbole, and I said, this is the ultimate source for everything you need to know about raising capital online. But when I started it, it didn't really have much, much on it. I had a few podcasts and a couple of articles of it.
Ooh,
Today, it is the ultimate source for anything you need to know. There's over 1 million words of content,
wow.
thousands, I don't know, hundreds of videos. So just gowercrowd.com. And then we also have a newsletter that goes out every Wednesday, or at least once a week. I shouldn't say every Wednesday because I keep trying to change it, but at least once a week. It's free. You can always unsubscribe, and it also covers latest updates in the industry and generally has educational content. A lot of free stuff. There's some premium stuff on the website, but most of what's on the website is absolutely free. So that's really the best place.
And they can join that newsletter from the website if they go to
Yeah, there's a
gowercrowd.com.
big red button that says subscribe. So click that.
Cool.
The other thing is, by the way, I also had a look to see who was subscribed to the website recently, and I couldn't believe it actually. So I put a bunch of company logos on the
Ooh.
subscribe page. It blew me away. So take a look at that. You'll see who you're joining. It's kind of cool.
That's really, really neat. Guys, there we always need to be growing in our field. And Adam is literally telling us right now he has tons of free information on this particular subject in real estate, which we all need to learn from. And so I'd encourage you go to gowercrowd.com and just spend time, listen to the podcast, read all of the words, the over 1 million words they've got written about it, and just spend time inundating yourself in it. Be like a sponge. And we'll put that link in the show notes, gowercrowd.com, so that you guys can find it easily and go check that out. Adam, man, I want to thank you so much for being on today. It was a pleasure chatting with you, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Darren, pleasure's all mine. Thanks for having me.